And we're live.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, friends.
Hello. I absolutely love that introduction. That's new. So I was just like, wow, this is so cool. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I should have. I need to redo it actually. That it'd be like I had a clip. Should have had a clip into you saying something, but that can be in the new one because I felt
Yes,
out right.
do it, Jennifer. Make sure you go like this a bit.
Do something
You got to
amazing.
do snake bite hand movements,
Body
and I'll try and
language.
synchronize it into the video. Anyway, you are one of the returning guests on the show. I think May King has beaten you to being a returning guest. I'm not sure how many other returning guests we have. Jim Hughes, I think, has been on twice with different people, which is a bit promiscuous, but that's another thing. So, for anybody who doesn't know who the wonderful Jennifer Gilmour is, could you briefly describe who you are?
Well, I am an author and advocate for women in abusive relationships, and I've been through several years of suffering from coercive control from my ex-partner, and I've used those experiences to raise awareness. And that's it in a nutshell. But obviously, it's really complex. So yeah, that's me.
Jennifer, you have raised awareness not only in England, but you have slowly but surely kind of been able to help raise awareness around the world because you do it digitally. And people just keep finding you. How do you feel about being a voice that is so wide? I don't know that you set out to do that.
I didn't, and obviously that actually came through one of the communities I set up, which is #AbuseTalk, and that's a Twitter chat. And I only set that up because I felt isolated and alone as somebody who had experienced domestic abuse. And I wanted to connect with those that have been through it because ultimately we have that shared understanding of what it's like to be in an abusive relationship. And that offers me more of a comfort. So that was my selfish reason for setting up #AbuseTalk. And as it has gone on, it started off with those in the UK, then it was the US, then it's Australia, Canada, France, Italy, all different kinds of countries, people getting involved, and different people of different importance. So the general public, friends and family of those who have gone through an abusive relationship. We've had MPs in the UK. We had Crime Watch UK drop in, national charities, and even charities across the world as well joining in as well. So I didn't plan for that to happen. It was a happy accident with a selfish reason to begin with, but I'm so glad that it's able to reach so many people and it's helping people. So yeah, it wasn't planned.
It's absolutely helping people. Oh, Tim, I'm cutting
Well,
you off.
I was just going to say, because I mean, I probably like 10 years ago, I would have had no idea what you meant by coercive control and a lot of these. So let's kind of, I mean, there are people, and it should be a situation that most people shouldn't know what all these terms mean, and there shouldn't be all this. So, but unfortunately, there is a lot of abuse in society. So take us through what something like coercive control means and like what are the typical kind of abuse problems that people have suffered from?
Yeah, so coercive control, if you looked at the UK definition, I think even me reading it, it's a minefield. It's really hard to get your head around. So for me, I generally use my own lived experiences for that understanding, but it's a pattern of behavior from that partner that will make you feel intimidated or threatened for the outcome. So you're forced into this entrapped situation and to abide by their rules and regulations that are maybe obvious and may not be obvious to continue in that relationship. So you're pretty much entrapped. And I mean, it sounds really, not very nice and nasty. And you think, how do you get into this situation? It's really slow and progressive. It doesn't start like that. So one of my early examples is I was home from work. I was about to meet my friends to watch a film. And he'd arrived home and said, "Oh, I forgot you were going out with your friends. I haven't seen you all day and I really miss you. Wouldn't you want to spend that time with me?" And I mean, that doesn't sound bad, does it? But
Yeah.
I made a choice that day to cancel my friend's plans. And that was his first step into knowing he has some form of control over me. And it continued to roll on to being in control of what I wore. He literally went clothes shopping for me towards the end of that relationship.
Yeah.
Who I see, who I don't see. So I hadn't actually been to my hometown for 2 years. I missed my granddad's funeral, my auntie's funeral, my cousin's wedding. I had no control over being able to actually attend those events. And I was financially bound to him. So there are so many different reasons as to why somebody would stay in that relationship. And there's probably little on how to get out of that relationship, to be honest. I had more reasons to stay than to leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the importance of it is knowing that it is progressive. You are manipulated and groomed into that situation, and it's not obvious at all. It's it's really slow. So yeah, I don't know if that helps give you some context of what coercive control can look like, but it's really complex. And I think the most important thing is for those who have experienced it, and for those who are safe, if they voice things that happen to them, because more people will be able to relate to those situations.
And that's just the thing. It's terrifying. That first step of starting to tell your story is absolutely terrifying. And how many people, Jennifer, have you been able to help actually privately because they can't voice publicly?
Yeah, so I mean, I should really count how many people I have helped, but I haven't done that. But it's messages upon messages, emails, phone calls each week. And my intention when I published my first book was just to put a charity phone number at the end, thinking that the message will help and everybody will go to the charity phone line. But it doesn't happen like that. People are in doubt still and don't think it's them. Yes, it resonates, but is that me? I'm stuck. They want to speak to a human. Yeah, they want to speak to a person. And so I've ended up being almost like a silent signposter, which is really difficult because you can get phone calls and all sorts at any time of the day, and I can't be available 24/7. So obviously I've had to put boundaries in place, but I would say I've helped hundreds, over thousands. I'm not sure how many people I've helped because I also indirectly help people through my written work and through, social media as well.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about one of your new projects that you're doing. I'm so excited to hear about this. You have a new book coming out, and you were telling us a little about some of the doors that have opened because of this. Will you kind of talk us through this? Tell us what's happening.
So I had the idea years ago, if I'm honest, and I have just taken a while to perfect it and to manifest it and to bring it to life. But I recognise that our children need to be educated on healthy relationships. And I had to really think back to where that begins. And I thought, when you go to primary school, you start making your first friends that aren't included in your family, maybe. So I looked at that and thought about what was it like for me in primary school? What is it like for my children in primary school right now? And I'm sure you might agree with me. Sometimes an incident might happen and then it's like, right, we've said sorry, let's all be friends and get along. And ultimately, we're giving children the wrong message because we should be able to choose who is a good friend to us and who maybe isn't. And obviously, if they aren't a healthy friend, we don't have to make a song and dance and be disrespectful about it, but we can choose. We have the authority to choose who is in our life. And so this children's book challenges that with a nice story. You follow it along. Again, it's a work of fiction, but it comes with a resource pack for teachers, for youth workers, for parents to open the discussion about what the difference between an unhealthy friendship is and a healthy friendship. ultimately in the hope this offers some kind of prevention, because they'll already start thinking about the difference, and then when we go into romantic relationships, hopefully we've equipped them well enough to look for signs and symptoms. So yeah, I've taken it right back to primary school, which is very different for me. But I also feel that I am equipped to do that, because once upon a time I was a children's and youth worker. So I'm trying to use those skills that have not been wasted to put this project together. So yeah, I'm really excited.
I think it's really fun when life adds up, kind of like a treasure hunt, and it turns out all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. When at times we look back on our life and go, I don't know why I did that. It seems like a waste of time, but indeed at some point it kind of all ends up working in such a manner. So that's cool. Something I picked up on this, Jen, is truly not everyone is our friend. And in schools and early childhood education, we send the wrong message. Everyone is our friend. We're friends with everyone. So this message that you're putting out there is important to start teaching early. And it's a message that I didn't learn until my 40s.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, is it? I've definitely put people through a sieve. I want to call it that. I've removed people from my life that weren't there. They were draining me, my energy, and weren't good for me. Maybe more on the toxic side. You want friends that are fulfilling, that bring that equality, that you support together, that you enjoy and have this energy about. You don't want to be drained from that person, do you? So it's a hard lesson, isn't it? But I realized that actually you can still see the signs of unhealthy people from a young age. I don't know if you've ever seen, Christelle, Tim, I'm not sure if you have, but they do those cameras in the nursery, those programs in the UK, and you can watch the children interact throughout the day, and their social situations are very similar. They get the same emotions as adults, but obviously it's on a child level. So it's really interesting to sort of look at the psychology behind some of these things. I'm definitely not equipped at that point, but I've seen in my own children, obviously, the importance of having the right friends around them and how that, affects their environment growing up.
Yeah.
Essentially just giving people permission to say, I don't have to be friends with everyone is a new message. So I can't wait to see this come out. When is it coming, Jen? Where can we find it?
In March, hopefully. It has had a delay, but literally I've been involved in the illustration process, so that's been a bit of a shock to the system. I've absolutely loved it. But it was really important for me to get this right, because this is something that is close to home for me, and I want it to be, a useful resource and tool. It's called The Funky Frex. You'll see it on my website, and you can sign up to my newsletter to be updated on when that comes out as well. That's at jennifergilmour.com. So hopefully nobody will miss it.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm turning into negative Nelly today, but I feel it's important, right? Because because I take lots of show clips from the shows now, so this can give you a nice little show clip. But what are some of the, well, we won't say the red flags, because if you got to the stage where it's red flags in a relationship, but what would you say are the pink flags, like the early warning signs that there might be something up in a relationship that maybe people don't spot?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been talking about this a lot recently, because red flags, you are probably in too deep into that relationship, and it's a struggle to get out of that relationship. But pink flags, I can draw upon my own experience, was me not being introduced to his family for a long time. And what was the reason for that? Him being secretive on his phone, him saying that his previous partners were crazy. I am now the crazy one, apparently.
Yeah.
So actually, there are things you can pick up on. It's whether we're switched onto that. Because we have grown up in a society that watches rom-coms and Disney movies that give out maybe the wrong message. And I was just thinking the other day, I was watching The Tinder Swindler. I don't know if anybody has seen this yet.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. No.
But they showed a clip from Beauty and the Beast. And what does the beast do? He entraps this girl. He controls what she can and cannot do, including what she wears. And then she falls in love with him. Like, what kind of message is this to our children? So I think, I'm going off on a tangent here, but pink flags, you've got a gut instinct. Think about what's making you feel that this doesn't sit right with you. What is it? Have they been secretive on their messages? Have you met the family? Have you gone through the right process in the dating stage? Have you asked those uncomfortable questions? Is their story lining up, each time? Because somebody who lies can't keep the story straight. So it's really just being aware and having your own kind of gauge on things as well, and listening to people's stories. I mentioned about friends, and your friends' opinions should count as well. Get your friends to say. A lot of mine said, they thought he was weird. Well, why didn't you share this with me? Ask for your friend's opinion and get them to be open and honest about what they think about that person as well.
That's really good, Jen. I'm thinking back to my own situation of how I didn't listen to friends. And so it's so important that we have that open mind and heart to listen to people. Jen, you've written 2 other books. I think this is really important. You tell us about those. At least 2 others.
Yes.
Are there more?
So I've got them here with me. So this is Isolation Junction. This was my debut novel. And this is a work of fiction. It's based on my own events and others. And it talks about emotional abuse. It was really important for me to focus on that and not turn it into the physical abuse side that we see in the media all the time. But you can literally, instead of having a leaflet or a pamphlet on domestic abuse, you can probably read this and be educated on it and maybe have that realization. Clipped Wings is a tough one because it is raw stories from people who voluntarily gave them to me, some via interview and some via their own written words. It's made up of 25 people, 24 women and 1 man. And that one's got everything in it. So from coercive control to sexual abuse to medical abuse to physical abuse. It's really quite hard hitting. So I think people read one story at a time to get through that. In lockdown, I was commissioned to write some anecdotes for the Recovery Toolkit, which I think, Christelle, you might have heard about. It's the program that I actually went on myself to help me. I don't think at the time I realized how much that abusive relationship had affected me. But the whole idea is that you can take steps forward in your life after that program. So it's 12 weeks, and because of COVID, the program wasn't being able to be delivered around the UK like usual. So they made a self-help book. And because I am one of those people that keep all my notes from any kind of course, or I journal quite a lot, I could draw upon everything that I was feeling from each session. And so they asked me to compile them and put it to this book so that there was a lived experience element to it. So I don't know how far you got with it, Christelle, or if you've read it.
I did a book review on it on my blog, and it was phenomenal. And so here's my goal for Jennifer. I have a personal goal. I want you in America telling your story and using your resources. So that's my goal. It's actually selfish. I just want to hang out with you.
This is
well, if you know anyone that wants to fly me over for an event and to talk, I'll be more than willing.
We need you over here. I am going to say goodbye. I'm going to leave you with Tim to chat about all your other projects going on. So good to see you as usual. Bye, Tim.
Miss you.
Bye, friends. I miss you too. We'll stay in touch. We'll chat.
Definitely.
Thank you, Christelle. See the new layout. Hopefully, like if Christelle gets we were nicely thingied.
Positioned.
So we've talked a lot about the abuse side, but you have, during lockdown, you've been running this small business group, which has actually got quite a lot of members. It's like several thousand members of the small business, and it's Latte. I was just going to say Latte in Literature, but that's somebody else's company. Latte
That would
and
be
Live.
super cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that, because I know, as well as the abuse side, you give an awful lot of support to small, especially almost micro business people. Talk about how you got started with that and how it's going.
Well, so I'll take you back, because actually I saw you on the day that I got some news. So I was at the small business, what was it, the social media marketing awards, and I received an award. You filmed me, which I love. Thank you so much for that. And I was on the train home feeling really empowered and things were going great. And my husband actually rang me up and said he's just been handed his resignation. I had a bit of a moment, a cry. I went from this high to this immediate low, and I said, this is it. We're not going to worry. We're going to try and both be self-employed full time. We've been waiting for the opportunity. Let's just go for it. We'll do it. We'll just make it work. And obviously that was the November, around about, I think it was. And then we had Christmas, and then COVID hit, didn't it? And I'm not going to lie, we both were freaking out, because most of my income was from speaking at events. And yeah, it was like, what am I going to do? And I thought, we can't be the only ones freaking out. So when it was announced that there was going to be a lockdown, we offered to do a pop-up Facebook group to support small businesses and to give them a panic room digitally, is what I would say it is. And that just really just evolved on its own into sharing resources about the funding options. We did the daily broadcast into there. We had just a safe space, and people would be then buying from each other and sharing, little success stories that were small at the time and then grew. And we turned that into, people wanted more, so we decided to give more and offer a premium membership to that group, which is Latte and Live. And we have Zoom networking calls. It's still going. We absolutely love it. And it gave me a bit of a yin to a yang. So I do have my domestic abuse work. You can imagine that's quite emotionally draining at times. But this is my creative side, where I get to have fun, because it is alternative. We play games and we have a laugh and we do jokes, and it is like completely different to your usual formal networking. And that's how that one developed. It was purely because of the want and the need of the members of the group that I carried it forward. And that was a really hard decision to make, because we never wanted to put a price on it. But when we started spending more time in this digital group than in our own businesses, we realized we had to shift something there. So yeah, that was another happy accident, but for a passionate reason, I guess. So yeah, it's still going. You can find it. The free group is called Small Business Networking Coffee House. Because we all like coffee. But if you are a tea drinker, you are totally welcome too.
Okay, I've just remembered another topic we can talk about, which has got nothing to do with abuse or small business, which is, we are fellow fans of the MCU. It's about the main thing that I ended up messaging you, and your husband seems to be kind of involved in this. We talk a lot about the MCU films, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if anybody's wondering. So I know that you and your husband sat through and watched all of the MCU films you watched it in film chronological order, so like the order of the films themselves were in, not as in when they were released. Is that right?
No, we watched them in the way that it should be watched for it to make sense.
Okay.
So it was, I found it on a blog. I can't remember why. And yeah, I can't remember what the thread, the way it is that you watch it. I can't remember what it was called. But I will try and dig that out. But it wasn't in order of the films. It was in order of the way the timeline of the actual
Yeah.
story, I believe. And yeah, I think I started watching them I think it was the second lockdown.
Mm.
I think we got the need to do this after so long that I'd only watched like Iron Man and Spider-Man. So I thought, right, let's go for it, let's do it. I absolutely loved it. I was so sad that it came to an end, and I just rated them on Instagram, and I think that's where you got involved.
Yeah.
Tim. And then I was like discussing it with Rob, so you inadvertently had this conversation with my husband without even knowing, which I love.
Yeah.
I haven't got onto the TV series yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I need to return back to those. I know my husband has started watching them and is working his way through, so I'm not sure he wants to repeat himself with me. But I really enjoyed it because I hadn't done that before, and obviously it's a long time from beginning to end to closing, all of that, isn't it? Isn't it like 10 years? Or is it
Yeah.
longer?
So, like, let's try and draw out a lesson because I could just talk about the MCU forever, and people be like, "Why are you talking about this?" But why do you feel that like a big body of work, content like that, is so appealing, especially because they're all interlinked? And is this something you're thinking about potentially? You could create. I mean, wouldn't suggest you create 23 books about various types of abuse or anything, or even small business. But why do you think the MCU is so appealing?
I think because it was appealing in terms of me seeing the original films, like the early ones, and then I personally lost track of all these characters and things that were interlinking, and I just didn't understand it, and I just didn't have the energy to understand it. I was a bit lazy with it. And so once the final film was out, it was like, right, let's go and watch it back so I can just understand it without having to think and use my brain and get into it. And I really liked the creative element of it. And I'm glad I did it that way because I'm a bit like that with series. I don't want to have to wait for the next week for an episode, especially something like Game of Thrones. Like, even if you watch that back to back, it can be confusing. So can you imagine waiting a week for the next episode? I don't think I would ever attempt it, but I have a big love for fantasy. So I loved Harry Potter and how, J.K. Rowling was the first person to age a character the way she did and, work with that. I love that. So I think that appealed to me again for the MCU because of the way it had a weave through it. And yeah, you can't guess what's going to happen really when the way they publish the films to how it actually works out. So yeah, I think that's what caught my attention. I don't think I'd ever attempt it though.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to think. Let's get back to abuse. Let's get back to abuse. It sounds terrible, but what would you like? I've asked people this question before. So if you were put in charge, if all of the world leaders decided we're going to put Jen Gilmour in charge of the world for a year.
Oh, goodness.
And this isn't that. I mean, this could be enforced watching of the MCU if you want it. What are a couple of things that you would enforce as world leader? You're given absolute power to do whatever you like. That you think would improve the world?
Well, I mean, it's really difficult, but I'd say educate our children better.
Yeah.
And I think that, if I'm looking at it from a domestic abuse point of view, about educating our children on healthy relationships, include before we talk about sex education.
Yeah.
And consent and what that looks like and how you use consent. So yeah, thinking of that right from that early stage up to going in there. So education, I would change that, especially with our relationships. If I'm talking aside from relationships, then I would say the things that I find frustrating is when we are learning about maths, why aren't we putting our credit card percentages to the test and learning maths in a way we use it? So life application within schools. So yeah, I guess education would be the first one. And second, I mean, I'm really digging the whole only work 4 days, have 3 days off.
Yeah.
And maybe the one day. So personally, what my husband and I do is on a Friday, we have a day off together, and we have that as our date day usually, because we don't have the blessing of lots of babysitters. So we spend the day together doing whatever we want, and then we still have Saturday and Sunday for our family. So I think putting that in place and helping, I can see Kelly with feminism. Yeah, I'm totally there with feminism. I actually was just saying last night, I think wouldn't it be amazing if women just became the only gender in the government, just to see what would happen for a year, just a year.
I'm sure Rob loved that.
We had a real in-depth discussion about it. It was because we were watching the Louis Theroux series. I don't know if you watch him.
No,
Obviously,
I don't really
dealing
watch.
with...
I sound like some sort of weirdo, but I generally watch most of my stuff on YouTube now. I don't watch traditional TV or Disney Plus.
Yeah, of course, YouTube. Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's funny. I've avoided watching Netflix, but everybody keeps saying, "Oh, there's this thing on Netflix." I'm like, because I already pay for Amazon Prime, and I only do that for the delivery. I don't really watch much on Amazon Prime.
No,
so
I think Amazon Prime's rubbish.
It is. It used to be a lot better, but they bought Love Film, and then they gradually took all the good stuff off it and just put a load of rubbish. They have occasionally good stuff on there, like The Card was on there, and that's about it, really.
Yeah, it's all. Every time I go on there, there's the same stuff on there, unless there's a specific series they're trying to compete with Netflix in trying to produce something. Then it's not worth.
That's I've got an Amazon Live show, so I probably shouldn't be criticising Amazon.
Oh yeah,
I'll get kicked off the influencer program.
Go from domestic abuse to MCU to all these different things.
So I'm going to ask, because Christelle had to go off and rush because she's turning into a pumpkin if she can leave at 20 past. I'm going to ask Christelle, what would be your message to end out? What would be your message to the world, and how can people find out about you? You've already mentioned your website and books and things, but what would be your message to the world, and how can people find out about you?
My message to the world, I would say, together we're louder. So sharing our lived experiences, whether that is from a domestic abuse point of view, or whether that's from your own childhood, or sharing stories, and I don't say sharing your truth, isn't it? I should say not story, because it is a truth, because that will help other people. Obviously, if it's a safe space and you're comfortable with doing that, then go ahead, because you just never know who you can impact and who you can help. And then where can you find me? JenniferGilmour.com. And I think you've got the QR code there. And I'm everywhere on social media pretty much as Jen L. Gilmour, because Jen Gilmour was taken, so I had to add my middle initial. Well,
that's why I'm stone impressed, because every variant of Tim Lewis or TL Lewis or T, like everything that was gone. So I'm stone impressed everywhere on Twitter. Well, thank you very much for being the guest today, and hopefully I'll happily press the titles. And thanks to all the people who've been watching, which has largely been Kelly, I think. And thanks for commenting, Kelly. And yes, I will be probably in the US. So Christelle might be in charge of next week's interview. So it'd be wonderful. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'm going to roll the titles.
Thank you, Tim.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
It's just cliche shit, you know.